What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the live stream / podcast. I'm your host, as always, John J. II, and this is Gin Promotions in collaboration with the official podcast of the best podcast in the capital city, TRILLPod. I'm blessed to be with the man, Chris Platty. How you doing today, Chris?
Jay, it's always good to be in the building with you. It's always good to get to podcast with you, talk with you, stream with you, all of that stuff. Loving the new intro, by the way. The new intro seems like it's a lot of fun. Reminds me of my days in the Capitol, and I miss those days for sure.
Yeah, thanks, bro. You know, if anyone that's seen the intro, make sure you check it out. It'll probably be available if you missed it already for the live. Go back and watch it later on, either on YouTube or Facebook or even Twitch if you want to. We're live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch, so I hope you're watching on one of those outlets. Thank you for joining us on a Monday. So we got a lot to talk about. Obviously, the pertinent topic of discussion is the MIGOS' new project, Culture 3. So, Chris, let me ask you, what are your takeaways from this album? This kind of brings us back to our roots of, we've done a few of these, hip-hop project reviews, kind of, analyst type style, conversations. This is a big one, though. It's a big drop. Yeah. They obviously have it done right, dropping it, We're probably, you're not quite in the heart of summer yet, but this is a summer drop.
Right.
And it was done that way for a reason. So what are your takeaways from this album? And what are your favorite songs?
Well, first off, my takeaways of the album are a lot of the things that you mentioned before. I had a lot of anticipation coming into this because it seemed like the perfect time. Culture 3 was way overdue. They had Culture 2, and then all of the Migos kind of took their separate route and they did their projects, whether they were collaboration projects, solo projects, sometimes both. They stayed active, but Migos as a whole was quiet for the last 3 years now. And that's something that's very different from them because of the way they make music. They make it so fast. And so for them to be able to produce an album, just one album in 3 years, was kind of put a lot of anticipation, put a lot of pressure, because the music industry has moved since the Migos. There's been a lot of new voices that have popped into the scene, the Lil Babies, the Roddy Ricch, the Babies. There's been a lot of new sounds emerging since Culture 2. So I was very curious to see Culture 3. Okay, they're going for the summer. That makes all the sense in the world. I was one of the people last year that was saying, if assuming that they had a project in the can, to wait until the summer, to wait until people can go outside. And that's what they did. And I think that was the smartest move for them. However, the album itself honestly didn't really hit for me to the level that it should have. And that's partly because of the anticipation around it. But it's really just the reality of it is just that it's an album that's just, it's cool. Like if somebody throws it on, you could throw on any song on the whole entire album, and not one of them I'm going to be mad that it's on. But as far as the songs that I'm going to curate and on my playlist and to play at my gatherings and all of that, I'm not really bumping this album. Like, to be honest with you, like I'm still bumping the Lil Baby and the Lil Durk album from last week, the Polo G album. And I think that reception is that reception of mediocrity or just being kind of cool is really the common theme, because I never would have thought that Polo G, who's a great young emerging artist, that he would outsell the Migos in the first week, and that's what he's projected to do. And so this is a big album release, and it seemed like it just didn't live up to the moment. But when I listened to the records, I knew not to expect to like the whole album, because I knew that they were going for quantity over quality. That's what they always do. But there's always going to be a floor with a Migos song, but it's the ceilings that I'm interested in. And this time the floor was great, like it always is, but the ceiling is excellent. And I feel like they only hit that on there a few times. Like, for example, I have a playlist where I save all of my favorite songs of the year in terms of contenders, and then I narrow it down to my top 100 of the year. And for the Migos so far on this album, when I listened to it, I added only 6 of the 20 songs onto that playlist, and I can get into those in a second. But the idea of going 6 for 20 is very disappointing, because in reality, I'm very generous with adding stuff to a playlist, and then working towards the end of the year and narrowing it down to that 100. And there's a chance that Amigos could, in my personal opinion, not have a top 100 song of the year. And I think that will speak to how strong the music scene will be this year, because we're going to get big drop after big drop. And I also think that it's just showing signs of the times that the Migos are still going to be commercially viable. They're still going to be in their prime. They still did good numbers as far as their first week sales, but it seems like it's like them and Khaled have kind of reached this point to where that pop audience that they go for is all they have now in their core foundation, their core fan base, the one that keep the numbers high, the one that keeps it in the culture, really doesn't push them or carry them to new heights. And so I think that, they're going to be somebody that's always going to be viable. Culture 4 is still going to probably sell over 100,000 or around 100,000, but that's really not the measurement for Migos. When you reach the stratosphere that the Migos have, their elite stratosphere, you got to do more than move 100,000 units. You got to have a song of the summer. And I don't know what song is the song of the summer. Like, they're going to try to push the Drake record to be the song of the summer. They're going to try and push the lead single Straightening. but I don't think any of those are going to make it, not even the Pop Smoke record. Like, they have records on here that they're aiming to beat Songs of the Summer, and I don't expect any of them to really chart within the top 5 of Billboard for even more than a week at best. And so that's not Migos like. And I think that this album was to some extent a miss. I think that they didn't sound bad. I thought Quavo had moments where he sounded good. I thought Takeoff had a lot of moments where he sounded good. Offset was pretty consistent throughout, but Quavo and Takeoff were the ones that had moments that shined to me. Like, Quavo really shined on the intro. I thought that was probably one of the most introspective records on the album, especially Quavo's verse. But it fell short to me. Like, the songs I liked were Avalanche. I liked the song with Drake, even though there's kind of a thing with the Drake feature where it kind of feels like it's going to build into something and it doesn't quite build into something. I liked Straightening Still. I liked Roadrunner a lot. I thought that beat was very interesting. I liked Mahomes a lot, and Antisocial with Juice WRLD was pretty good as well. And those were the ones that I rock with. And then I kept it moving. Unfortunately. So I'm slightly disappointed. However, I wasn't expecting to like the whole album. But I am disappointed that I don't have at least one song that's going to stay in my rotation forever. Like, Culture 2 has a few of those, like Narcos and White Sand. I still bump pretty regularly. This album, I don't think there's a record that's going to stay with me past, unfortunately, this week. I mean, it's already kind of faded out of my rotation. I've already gone back to Cole. I've already gone back to Polo G. I've already gone to back to Lil Baby and Lil Durk, and then some of the other R&B stuff I've been listening to. So it hasn't even lasted the rotation. And here we are, like, 4 or 5 days after the album release. So I think that's a tough sign, and I think that's a sign of also just the times we're in with music just being so fluid and everybody expecting everybody to drop. So it's very microwave. It's very hard to even last a week, and I think Migos is seeing that this year with their album drop culture.
Wow, Chris Platty speaking facts and speaking really critically on the Culture 3 album. I mean, you got to be critical about these guys. The Migos, the problem is with the Migos is that they have put out so many good projects, so much good music, where they have such a high ceiling to even match. And I know a lot of critics even say that the Migos, they sound very repetitive. Every song sounds the same. Everything, their flows aren't very differentiated. And I agree with that to a certain extent. But I actually thought a couple of records on here bumped pretty hard. And you didn't even mention any of them. I was surprised. So Modern Day, the one that they just put the music video out, I really like that song. That's like one of my favorite ones on the track or on the project. And then I like Birthday, and then obviously Straightening, the one they released as a single. But other than that, none of them really do anything for me. Like you said, quantity over quality. And that's a major flaw with the Migos. They feel like they got to put out so many tracks where, they're shortchanging themselves. And I felt like after Modern Day, the 7th track, they kind of just, were throwing darts at a dartboard and just seeing what stuck. And I think that's a problem for the Migos and big labels anyway, especially, quality control. So I think that quality control might be diverting. They still have the Migos as their poster child artists, or artists, if I may. But they're kind of going in that Lil Baby direction, that Polo G direction. So I think they're kind of looking at turning over new stones and just kind of looking at the future and seeing what they can do next, going into the new era of rap, because it's an ever evolving industry, as we all know that. So just one of those things.
And I agree with everything you said. And another thing that I said earlier, which I want to reemphasize, I think is important, is that the Migos is that, number one, I don't want to totally bash the album, because the album is quality to an extent. Like, it is an album that has 20 songs, and when I listen to 20 songs, I know there's songs I'm not returning to, but I also can't identify one song as like a terrible song. Like your favorites, how you brought up, They're not my favorites, but for the most part, I see why people like them, and I'm not mad if they're on when I'm around. I'm not gonna be like annoyed by it or want to change it. They have a great, like I said, a great floor. They have a very high floor that most artists can't reach. The problem is them getting to the ceiling. And I think that they would have been better off to shorten the track list and really go for quality over quality over quantity. Sorry. I think that would have helped them a lot. But at the end of the day, they and DJ Khaled are in this space now where they've kind of transcended hip hop, and they'll still always be, not to use this term here just to be a pun, but they will still be culturally important. Like Khaled and Migos releases will always be anticipated in hip hop because of what they've done for hip hop. But we kind of now expect from Migos and Khaled, like Khaled gave us a whole album and not one song is going to be the song of the summer. And that's crazy to me because every Khaled album, even the last few that I wasn't a fan of, but ever since the last 10 years, Khaled has maybe almost every time given us a song that's one of the biggest songs of the summer. He finds a way to get those summer anthems, and he didn't this time. And it was the same with Culture 3. These projects felt like they were rushed, which is really unfortunate because both of these were longer waits of releases for both Migos and Khaled. But again, at the end of the day, they're always going to have pop music fans, and that's going to be their realm that they'll be able to continue to eat and live off of. And it will always be a moment when they drop, when Culture 4 is announced, if it's announced next year, where you and I are going to be back talking again, and we're going to be looking forward to it, despite how mid Culture 3 was. But I think that this had a benchmark, and they didn't reach that benchmark with this album.
Yeah, and I think I want to speak on something too that seems to be a pertinent issue in the hip hop industry and maybe other industries too, where this type of thing is similar. So I call it the Drake mentality, but it can also be dubbed the DJ Khaled mentality or even the Migos mentality, where they've reached such a ceiling already in their careers with different projects and different records, where they almost feel like they can touch anything and turn it into gold. Where I think that's shortchanging not only the artist, but it's shortchanging the audience. And I guess, I don't know, how would we fix this, or how would they fix this issue? Or what can be done? Is there anything that can be done about this? Like, are the Migos ever going to make, I feel like it's a possibility, but how possible is it that they could make, that maybe their best song or best project hasn't came out yet? Is that a possibility, or have they already reached that point?
I'm an optimist when it comes to artists, and because artists are not like athletes, creatives. You can have your spark. Like, for example, Royce da 5'9", one of my favorite rappers. He's absolutely at his best right now creatively as an artist, and he's in his 40s. And so I think that when you are a creative, you're never done until you're done. And so I think that it is very possible for both Khaled and Migos to put forth their best foot, their best effort, their best project, their best song, however you want to phrase it. I think that it's very possible. Do I think that it's very likely though? I wouldn't say so. But if they were to go about it, the way I would suggest is for them, they need to pump new blood into what they have. And DJ Khaled kind of tried to do it this year with just grabbing a couple of artists and a couple of newer artists that he hasn't really worked with before. And, that may not have translated well on this album, but it could set up chemistry to further set up the success of future albums. And with Migos, I think for them, they have to find a way to reinvent their sound. Like they rapped like the Migos rap. And it's cool to do that. Excuse me. It's cool to do that a few times, because we miss the Migos. It's been 3 years, but also there's nothing that we get from Culture 3 that wasn't on Culture 1 or 2. It's just Culture with new beats, and I think that they have to find a way to freshen it up, to spice it up, whether it's playing with song structure, whether it's going more experimental on production side. And you don't have to go super artistic and have like live instrumentation and stuff for the Migos. I think that would be an interesting fold to add, you know, here or there, but just literally diversifying your production and your approach. And also lyrically, I thought that there was moments, I thought that there was verses on here, like I stated, probably the most standout verse of the whole album to me was Quavo's verse on the intro, where he was actually getting pretty introspective. And I thought that really did something for me, because if I would have felt like every single time that I heard them on every single song, if I would have felt like they rapped very well and that they gave me something new and gave me something fresh, I would have enjoyed that, because Amigos are Amigos. They can sound good saying whatever they want. So if they can kind of get into a more lyrical bag, I think that can help. And I think the biggest thing is cutting down the number, like cutting down the number of tracks. I think that that's something that Khaled and Migos can both do, and it will help them tremendously. Because, you know, by the end of this, like, honestly, I mean, who's listening to this album more than once all the way through? You and I are listening to it once, maybe twice all the way through. We're taking our favorites, putting them on a playlist, and keeping it moving. Culture is an album. The first Culture I'm talking about is an album where you can play the whole album. And that's because it's shorter quantity, and it was more precise and it was more fresh. So they have to find ways to not only make the music fresh, but I think cutting the numbers down, especially in this streaming era where everybody's so microwave, everybody's moving on to the next thing. I think that that's a good idea for them to really just shorten it and give us something, leave us wanting more instead of having too much. I think is a big thing, because right now I have no desire to return to this project. And I'm sure I will at some point. I'm sure I can throw it on as some type of function or whatever, just as knowing that it's going to be easy music to play in the background that people will enjoy listening to. But I think that really going forward, they have to find a way to make us miss them more. Like, I would love if Culture 4 was only 10 songs and I felt like at the end, man, that was really dope, but that's it. Like, I would love to want more from the Migos, but I haven't wanted more from the Migos in now 3-4 years. So I think that's an issue that's the quickest issue to fixing it. And the other one is, again, getting into more experimentation, finding ways to either rap with new pockets, or add something lyrically, or do a lot on the production side, or all of the combined. I think they just need to find a way to refine the magic that they first captured on Culture.
Gotcha. Yeah. So let me ask you this. What do you think carries more weight amongst listeners? A fire EP, so anywhere from 3 to 5 songs, or a pretty good or even great album that's 15 plus songs? What do you think carries more weight? What do you think lasts longer amongst audiences?
I think it, not to cop it out, but I think that really it depends on how the level of the quality of the music. Like, if a great album is great all the way through or most of the way through, that's going to hold weight more than an EP. Even though we are in a microwave era, people, at the end of the day, people want good music, and however much of it they can get, the happier they'll be. Like, if you give me an album of 18 songs, but all 18 songs, all 15 songs are really, really good, I'm calling that a great album. That's what I did last year with Detroit 2. That's why that was my number one album, is because that was an album where it had songs that were a little less lovable than some of the highlights, but nonetheless, there was no bad songs on an album that was 21 tracks, 18 if you don't count the skits. Versus there were some albums that were 12 songs that were really good, really concise, and all the way through really good. But at the end of the day, this other album was 18 and had just as many highs. So again, it really comes down always to quality. But I think the Migos going the route that you're suggesting of doing maybe EPs or short little projects, I think that's perfect for the Migos. Just kind of dropping. Give us a 4-pack out the blue. I think a 4-pack out the blue from the Migos, you know, give us 1 or 2 songs that could be like the song of the summer, and that would do a lot for the Migos. So I think that, again, the quality is the most important, but if you give us like 4 really good songs, if they would have gave us the 4 best songs of Culture 3 before dropping it, and they would have been like, all right, Culture 3 on the way, this is to hold you over, the anticipation would have been even much higher than it already was. It was already very high because it's Amigos, but if we would have got the 4 best songs on here that we really like, and let's say you and I agreed on what the 4 best songs were, I know we didn't, but we could come up with a list of of what we think is our mutual 4 best songs. If they were to put that out before the album and be like, yeah, the album's coming next month or later this summer or whatever, we would have been super hyped for this, because there's definitely 4 songs I could take away from this project that, again, I'm not listening to extensively, but I was thoroughly impressed with when I first listened. And I think that can really do something for the Migos going forward.
Yeah, and the reason I pose that question is because we talk about this all the time. Even back in the White Hills days, we would talk about, quality over quantity and, things of that nature. And I think that, especially for the Migos, where they really go for those hard hitters, they really go for those big, grand slam tracks. I think that they could carry more weight with the listeners and, essentially boost themselves and their brand a lot more by doing, little 4-packs like that. Yeah. Because not only would they hit harder when they're better made and more time is taken to make them, but you have the quality over the quantity. And also, if you split it up, you're not overworking yourself just to put a song out. Right. You're also remaining relevant instead of, going 2-3 years where nobody really hears about you, maybe a single here and there, but then you drop a big project out of the blue. I feel like you've already lost a lot of your listeners, a lot of your audience in that interim. So I think that the 4-pack idea is a really great idea for pretty much any artist.
Yeah, I think there's very few exceptions, like like the Kendricks, Coles, and Drakes that are Drake does drop packs historically, at least he has recently, which has been a nice little bonus. But Kendrick is not even releasing features at this point, and it's to the point where it has everybody excited because they're like, we have not heard a Kendrick song in the last 3 years at least. Damn was 4 years old, but he had the Black Panther soundtrack, and then he had a couple features that year. And then he had a feature that released last year, but that was recorded in 2012. You can literally hear his Good Kid, Mad City voice. And so we think about the fact that we have not heard a single moment of Kendrick in the last at least 3 years. And so everybody on earth is like, what's he going to sound like? And with the Migos aren't as artistically different and ever changing as Kendrick. So we didn't have that. But we had it to an extent of everybody was very excited for this album when it came out. And I think that another thing that you mentioned, or that when you mentioned the 4-pack that came to mind, was the idea that it will also allow them to kind of see what works and what doesn't. If they can see the reception of 4 songs they put out, and they could say they might not even pick the 4 best songs. Let's just pick 4 songs that we feel are stylistically different on the album. And then you can then test the market. Let the market show you what they want. And they will show you, Apple will show you the ones that have the stars. Spotify will show you which ones the numbers were streamed the most. And you'll be able to see what are people gravitating to, and that could be a good indication of what they want from us with this upcoming project. And that can allow you to retool things and be like, okay, they weren't messing with too many of these type of songs, so we have a couple more of these on the album, so we can slim this down here and make a 19 track, make it to 16 here, but we can also cut down this over here and trim it to, and then you got a nice little 14 track album at the end of the day instead of 20, and it's going to be more precise, and people are going to and I think people are going to like it more. I think the more mid, or the more or the more subpar music you give somebody, the more it fatigues you and turns you off, especially someone like me who listens to a lot of music. And I'm sure you're the same way. If you have an album that has great songs, you're happy. But at the end of the day, if it's a 20 track album and you got only a few songs that are great, it makes it harder for those next ones as you get deeper into the first listen to really like the album. Like, you're not, by track 18, by track 16, you're pretty worn down, and you're just like, okay, this is just another Migos song, and that's why you got to kind of give it another chance just to see, like, was I just fatigued at this point of the album listening, or are these songs actually not that good? But overall, I think that, that's something that the Migos can really also fix or change to help fix their sort of problem that they have.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, and when you see multiple songs, you have a banger here, then you may have like 4 to 5, okay songs, maybe 2 stars out of 5. They're okay, they're listenable, but you probably won't return to them. It kind of waters down the rest of the songs, and you bring the law into averages. Yeah, and it's tough to really differentiate at that point. It's just kind of like a garbled mess at that point because you take all the songs combined into one. I think there's a sweet spot between 8 to 14 songs.
Yeah.
And 14 is even on the higher side. But once you get over 15, you're starting to get into the weeds. And especially that's if you want to put out a project like an album project. So like a major project, 8 to 14, I think is your sweet spot. After you get over that, you better make sure that 90% of those songs are bangers, or else that album probably won't be remembered too much.
Right.
And then obviously you have your 4 to 6 packs that come out, and those are a little bit easier to kind of differentiate the averages, because you might have 2, 3 bangers on there and 3 that are and then you can kind of make that work with the entire project marketing wise and having it be listenable. But Absolutely. A lot of great things to consider. I mean, this is music dynamics 101, and this is across every genre. This isn't just hip hop.
Yeah.
This is across, rock and roll, heavy metal, pop, soul, R&B, everything. So I think that a lot of these pointers, a lot of these kind of a lot of this stuff is very pertinent to a vast majority of genres of music. So,
and we're seeing with Drake too, like we're seeing it with Drake, which is crazy because Drake is Drake. He's the biggest. And he talked about, the reception of Scorpion, and even how Scorpion had its very low reception because of just the fact that it had so many records. And this is Drake. This is the guy that can wake up out his sleep and make a #1 hit. I mean, this is another world of talent. Migos are in the upper echelon, but Drake is in his own stratosphere in terms of making commercial hit records. And even he struggled to put together a quality double album, which ended up being, pretty much just as many tracks as, it was a few more tracks than this Migos album. I'm sorry. But even he talked about now with this upcoming album that he wants to keep it around the 14 to 16 track spot. And that's still longer, but for Drake can probably make a 16 track album work, just because he is Drake and just because he has had his longest hiatus since an album drop in his whole career. So there is that anticipation for him as well. But that just shows you that literally this is a problem that everybody struggles with in the music industry. It's just simple dynamics. And, it comes down to, where does the label want? Does the label want the quick money grab where they have the 20 songs so they get crazy streaming numbers? Or do you want to go, or do you listen to this project, believe that it has the potential to be considered a classic? Because those classic albums ultimately are the albums that sell the most. Those are the albums that get that 20 years down the line, kids like me that didn't grow up on it decide to listen to it because everybody in my respective field, in my respective culture, says that this is an amazing album. I need to listen to this and see what this special moment's about. And so that they're getting album sales that, that an average album from 20 years ago, or even a solid album from 20 years ago, probably isn't getting, because they got the classic stamp. So it also comes down to the label being like, okay, what's our best play here? Is it quantity or is it quality? And too often the labels try to force quantity over quality. And I think that's the mistake that the Migos made on this one, and have made the last couple albums, and hopefully we'll change on in the future. But if not, they're gonna be the Migos. They'll be just fine. They'll be just fine. They'll have no problems selling music.
Right. And an album that comes to mind classically, and you can attest to this one, is Nas's Illmatic. I mean, you tell kids even nowadays, and that's way before our time. As far as listening to rap music, that's 10 songs, and they're all pretty much bangers. You have some that hit harder than others,
Right.
but you can go back to that one even 20 years from now and be like, wow, this was a foundational project.
Yeah.
And I don't, it's hard to really put that type of stamp on it. Especially nowadays with how microwaved everything is and how fast paced our musical tastes are. We have something new to listen to more than we ever did, especially in the world of streaming. So it's a constant struggle, but I'm sure the best ones will figure it out.
Yeah, there's always going to be classic albums. You know?
Oh yeah,
like
they'll always be made.
There's always just going to be artists that reach a level of creativity that's just amazing, and like there's just going to continuously be classic albums. It's just a matter of now we're in an era where we get more mid to solid albums than we did in years past. And as a music fan, I'm okay with that. I'm never really mad at mids because sometimes there could be one song on a mid album that can really stick with me, and that can be a song that ends up being one of my most listened to songs. And so, you know, that could be something that I really take going forward for the rest of my life. So, you know, it's a good problem to have, but it is in some sense a problem. And I think it's all about identifying and being honest with yourself and your label and figuring out, getting on the same page and figuring out where do we want this to go. And I don't think that they thought that this was going to be an album, a classic album, Culture 3, but I think that they wanted a better reception than what they're getting. And I think that, you know, hopefully that can actually, in the Migos' favor, kind of turn around and be a spark for them. And they can honestly be like, you know, this is 2 albums now that didn't hit over the span of 3 years. We have to figure this out. And, you know, they're great artists or talented artists. So again, they have the potential to do it. And maybe this is the springboard moment to get them to create that new, special, fresh Migos moment that they're totally capable of.
Very well said. A lot of good stuff in there, guys. Let's move on. Let's change gears a little bit. Let's talk about the NBA playoffs. So obviously a lot has happened over the last couple of weeks. A lot of things have transpired. I think the topic of discussion, though, is that the Suns have swept the Nuggets 4-0. What are some of the components that allowed this to happen? Where did Phoenix find the holes in the Denver Nuggets offense and defense?
Well, I think that offensively, we knew that Phoenix was going to have its way just because they had 2 dynamic guards, just like Portland. The difference is the rest of Portland's roster is not nearly as talented as the rest of Phoenix's roster. Like DeAndre Ayton was a big man who was able to give Jokic enough of a problem. Jokic is the MVP, so obviously Jokic is the better player and played like the better player this series. However, it wasn't as drastic as what he was able to do against Nurkic and Kanter. And literally Jokic was being guarded by Carmelo Anthony in the last round. And that's a very, very favorable situation for Denver. So the difference was just talent level, obviously was the biggest takeaway. And this Phoenix team, man, they just, you know, all credit to them. They've really bought into who they are. They really understand who they are. And they're playing at an amazingly high level. They are playing NBA championship caliber basketball. I don't care what year. I don't care what injuries happen. Injuries happen every year. But this team is playing, I am identifying this as a team that is playing championship level basketball. They're playing amazing, and they are going to give problems with whoever they face in the Western Conference Finals, whether it's Utah or whether it's the Clippers. We don't know yet, but either one, I don't know if either of them can beat the Suns. And I had the Clippers at the beginning of the playoffs before they started. I had the Clippers going all the way. And obviously, since then, the Clippers have done a lot of Clippers things to give me anxiety about that pick. So I would rock with it if the Clippers find a way past Utah. I would pick them to go over Phoenix. But right now, if I'm being totally honest and totally objective and in the moment, Phoenix looks like the best basketball team in the West. And they look like they can beat any team in the East, especially Brooklyn with their injuries. That obviously changes the entire landscape of the Eastern Conference and the NBA Finals. I mean, we could really be looking at Chris Paul as an NBA champion, and that is something that would be just an absolutely amazing storyline, man. Nobody deserves it more than Chris Paul. And history would try to write this as a year where they just took advantage of injuries. But the truth is, even though we've had more injuries this year than previous years, injuries happen every year. And to be a champion, you have to be damn good at basketball. You have to be damn good, and you have to be lucky. Those are two things that every single champion has in common. I don't care if you're the 72-10 Bulls or you're the NBA bubble champion Lakers. Like, to be an NBA champion is hard, no matter how you do it. You need luck, and you need and injuries happen and breaks happen. So you need to be damn good and be lucky. And Phoenix looks like they are on the course to do that. I think they're going to represent the Western Conference in the finals right now. But ultimately, like I said, I'd have to kind of stand by the Clippers pick, just because if they find a way to the conference finals, that was the team I originally picked. But right now, they're looking like the best team in the West, and they're going to give whoever they play a run for their money next round. And this is good now because Chris Paul with the sweep, he's able to just have a couple days to be extra fresh and extra healthy. And that's huge because he balled out last night and he looked like, oh my God, he looked amazing. So this is just a really great storyline to see. And fans all across the NBA, unless you're one of the teams like that's still in playoff contention, still in championship contention, you should be rooting for the Suns. If you're a Pistons fan like me, you got nothing to root for right now. You should be rooting for the Suns, man, because for Chris Paul to get a ring, that would be beautiful, man. He's an all-time great, and he deserves to be respected as such. And the championship is obviously the one thing that's eluded him this far.
Do you think the Suns are playing like they have unfinished business from the bubble?
I do think that's a huge part of it. Absolutely. That's a very good point that you bring up. The fact that they came into the bubble and they literally had to win every single game just to have like a 1% chance of making the playoffs. And they did that. And they ultimately didn't make it just because other teams were able to win just enough games. But, hey, shout out Phoenix, man. Like, what they did in that bubble was very special. And, that's when we knew, okay, that this team has something in it. And then they got Chris Paul. And, now Chris Paul is showing that Chris Paul is Chris Paul, and the difference that he can make to a team is just drastically night and day. And, this team is now playing championship level basketball. And like I said, I think they're going to the finals right now. And I think that they can give anybody in the East a run for their money, whoever makes it to the finals.
Speaking of the East, who seems like the powerhouse in the East? It seems kind of up in the air right now. No one's really claimed it as their own like Phoenix has. Who do you see as a powerhouse in the East, especially with all the injuries in Brooklyn?
Yeah.
Where do you see the East going as far as a conference champ?
I see it Philly. Philly and Clippers were my finals to start the season, to start the playoffs. And, I have a lot less confidence in in the Clippers than I do Philly. I think Philly, obviously the Embiid thing is scary. Like the fact that he somehow tore his meniscus, but he tore it which is a serious injury, but he tore it ever so slightly. So he was able to come back. Like, that just scares me. So, obviously Embiid's health can change change that entire team on an instant. But Philly to me looks like the best team in the East, considering Brooklyn's injuries to Kyrie and James Harden. I just look that James Harden, whenever you re-aggravate the same injury, the time span, the timeline is always longer. And so if we're being honest and we're just looking at it, the fact that he's re-injured this hamstring, that I'm not really expecting him to come back for the rest of the playoffs. If he even if they find a way out of this Milwaukee series. And Milwaukee, look, Kevin Durant lost his two best players, his two best sidekicks, and Brooklyn is a terrible defense, and Milwaukee is still only averaging about like 90 points a game. Like, Milwaukee has very real flaws. Like, we have to be very honest about Giannis right now. We have seen enough of it to know that this year we can conclude that Giannis is a great player, but he is very one-dimensional in the playoffs in terms of offense. And he needs a lot of offensive firepower around him to make it work, because right now he is struggling. There is no reason that Blake Griffin, who's playing great defense on him. Shout out to Blake Griffin. Detroit, we love Blake Griffin. Let me make that clear, because I hate those narratives on Twitter about everybody being upset in Detroit. No, everybody in Detroit is happy for Blake, except for like maybe 10 people. And that's who the voice you're choosing to amplify it. And it's the wrong voice. We all love Blake and we're happy for Blake. Now, that tangent aside, that little rant aside, Brooklyn is playing pretty well on Giannis. Like, Giannis is not having a great series right now, and Brooklyn is a terrible defensive team. So that just goes to show you that if Milwaukee makes it past this round, like, what are they going to do when Joel Embiid is in the paint instead of Blake Griffin? How good is Giannis going to be then? And then they have Ben Simmons and Maurice Thybulle, who, yes, they can't really shoot, but you know what they're going to be able to do? They're going to be able to, if Brooklyn can hold this team to 80, then the 76ers might be able to make it like a 0-4 Pistons game and make the final score like 62-56. Like Philly is so nasty defensively when they are at their height. So I think that Milwaukee has shown real problems no matter what happens in this series. Like, unless they absolutely blow the roof off of the Nets these next couple of games and make it a dominating, convincing series, I've lost all trust in Milwaukee to be a championship team. I think they're honestly just a damn good team. And, obviously an Embiid injury or something can change that as far as getting to the finals. But Milwaukee and Brooklyn, ironically, this series that was touted as the NBA Finals, whoever was going to win this would win the championship. In reality, I walk away from this series looking like both of these teams are not champions. Now, obviously, it's unfair for Brooklyn because it's health, but I walk away from this series with no confidence in either of those teams to win the championship this year. So I think the champion is going to be outside of that matchup, which leaves Atlanta. Atlanta's a nice team, but I just don't see it. Philly, and then Phoenix, and then the winner of this Jazz Clippers series. So somebody is going to win the championship, and I think it's not Brooklyn or Milwaukee. I think both those injuries are real for Brooklyn. And Kyrie, that ankle injury is serious, and if he comes back, he'll be limited. And then same with James Harden. James Harden, if he's even able to come back, he will be very limited and have a high chance of re-injuring that hamstring again. So, it's gonna be tough for Brooklyn. It's gonna be tough for Brooklyn, and Milwaukee has exposed themselves as a team that just really is easy to game plan against in the playoffs, or easier than most of these other contenders. And so I think the champion is going to be outside of that matchup.
Yeah, still a lot in the air for this playoffs. There's a lot of teams that are kind of more or less a crapshoot, especially in the East. It seems a little less convincing than the West does. I think the Suns will be facing the Jazz, but there's still a lot of games to be played because I really like the Clippers. They have a lot of good going on in their camp, so they could really easily come back from this 2-1 deficit. Yeah. So anything can happen really at any point. So a lot of games to be played still. It'll be interesting to see how the playoff picture and the playoff landscape changes within the next week or so. Really excited.
If you had to pick a finals right now, what are you picking?
I'm going to pick Phoenix and the 76ers.
Okay, so you're with me.
Yep.
Yeah,
for sure.
I think
because I think they beat the Jazz. I think Phoenix beats the Jazz if the Jazz beat the Clippers. Just I think they outplay them. I think they.
Who do you think poses a better matchup for the Suns? Who do you think is a harder series for the Suns? Is it the Clippers or is it the Jazz?
I think the Clippers will give the series more longevity. I think that there's too many shooters on the Jazz where the defense in Phoenix is way too good to allow them to shoot and make the amount of threes that they're making right now. I think it's more lax playing against the Clippers. So I feel like they'd be able to shut them down around the perimeter a lot more. But I think the Clippers are a lot more, multifaceted. So I think that they would find holes in Phoenix's defense to be able to make that series go a little longer. But I think they still fall short.
I agree. 2 stars are always harder to guard than 1.
100%. Good stuff. Well, that brings us to the end of the show today. Chris, you got anything you want to plug before we sign off?
Just, the usual. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Real Chris Platty. Thank you, John, for always putting it in there. I appreciate you, Jay. that's the best way to stay up to date with my content. On Instagram is particularly the best way, because that's where I also connect with Imperial, the media company in Detroit I do a lot of work with. I do the Wave every week, which is 1 to 2 segments a week talking either hoops or hip hop, just kind of the most interesting newsy thing in whichever world. So right now we're doing a lot of playoffs, but with hip hop having some major news recently, there's definitely going to be some hip hop content as well. Also the live streams, which you joined the last one. Those have been great. They're picking up steam. They're getting better and better each time. It's really just every Friday night at 8 p.m. I go live on Instagram, and it's really just my time to be like, okay, I talk for a living and people listen to it and then people comment back. But the live is a way for me to kind of set something up that's casual, that's fun for you to talk to me, and to have just all of my followers, all of my listeners be able to interact with me. So we play music, we drink, we hang out, we have the games on the live stream, the NBA playoff games on live stream as well in the background. And we just kind of talk hoops, talk music. I kind of ask everybody what they're listening to, what they're rocking with, and kind of just let the conversations go where they go. And I even go live with some people, like, shout out my guy Bryce last week. Bryce is my guy. He popped in the live and he was able to, kind of just go live with me. We started talking about like IDK and JID and 2 artists and GoLink and some artists that we're looking forward to up and coming in the music industry. And, that was totally unplanned. That's just how it unfolded. And it was a great live. It got great reception. I always post them. So if you want to watch them afterwards, if you miss them, they're always posted to my Instagram profile. But yeah, that's something that I'm really pushing, that I'm having a great time doing. It's really fun. Shout out to the guys at Imperial in Detroit. You guys helped me a lot with that. And then also, of course, the podcast, the podcast, Strictly Hip Hop, Strictly Hoop Talk, wherever you get your podcast. Again, both of my accounts have it linked in the bio, but Strictly Hip Hop and Strictly Hoop Talk, Strictly Hip Hop covering obviously the music industry, and then Strictly Hoop Talk covering the NBA. And so I'll be doing an NBA playoffs podcast tomorrow, which will be up either tomorrow or Wednesday. Not sure yet, depending on what time we lock in the recording. And then, hip hop, I'm working on something. I'm working on kind of a more philosophical deep dive think piece that I'm working on. And then again, yeah, the Wave and all the stuff I do in Imperial on Instagram. So those are all the places to find me content wise, and just tap in with me everywhere. And again, I want to thank Jay for all his support and always using his platform to help lift my platform. I greatly appreciate that. And I always try to do the same for you, because I respect what you do here. And, it's always good for us to come in and talk music and talk hoops. I always enjoy it.
Likewise, I do too, brother. I appreciate the nice words. Yeah, make sure to check out all of Chris's content. He's all over the internet, has his own podcast, has everything like that. I plug it all the time, Strictly Hip Hop and Strictly Hoop Talk. He's everywhere, especially with Imperial now. It's all over his profile. So check out his handle right there on the bottom of the screen, at Real Chris Platty, for those listening audio only. Check him out. A lot of great content. I tuned into the live stream, like he said, last Friday. And there was a lot of great stuff, a lot of great commentary, very informal, very, talkative wise, conversation-esque type of content, which is really nice to have, especially, compared to, I try to keep that here on, the Gin Pros live stream too. And a lot of it's very informal, but it's a different type of informal on Instagram Live. Yeah. It gives you that more, okay, we're just chilling, we're talking, things are kind of going on in the background, other than, having to focus directly, right on the camera at all times. So it's kind of it's almost like you're sitting in the room with them watching the games. It's kind of nice.
Yeah, it's literally just you highlighted it, man. It's just hanging out, man. Come hang out with me. If you're rocking with me, come hang out with me. Let's talk, let's kick it, let's socialize, and let's chop it up. And you have me on all your live streams, and now that this is my only experience into the live stream world so far. So I'm gonna definitely, one of these times, when you pop in the live, like, request to go live with me, man. We'll go live and we'll talk for a minute. All the times you host me on your live, I gotta host you on mine. It's only
right. Fair. I know. I was waiting for that invite. But yeah, for sure. I'm gonna do that next Friday or this coming Friday when Chris goes live. I'm gonna hop on it. I'm going to comment. I'm going to, join the live request to get on there. So we'll do a little collaboration on his platform. It'll be fun. Really excited. So the last thing I got to plug is the Corona Challenge that happens this Saturday, June 19th, 2021. Thank you to everyone that has signed up to be a whole sponsor for this event. Everyone that's signed up. Just released the pairings and the Vegas odds for certain teams today. So check that out on our Facebook page, facebook.com/GinPros. It'll also be posted to our website later tonight. But yeah, really excited about this event, and it's finally here after long last. So yeah, I'll leave it at that. Yeah, really excited, man. It's been a long time coming. I don't know if you've been following it, Chris, but the entire Corona Challenge has been, it's been a while. Probably since February we've been talking about it. Whereas last year, that the same event, we didn't start plugging it until October, and it happened at the end of October. So we had like 3 weeks to plug it compared to like 4 or 5 months this time. So
there's definitely been a much bigger buildup and much more anticipation surrounding it. So I'm a tap in, I'm gonna look for it, and I'm always excited, man. I'm always excited to see new footage on the intro when I pop in. I'm sure that will provide some for sure.
It definitely will. And that's the key too, is I want to start making more intros so we can kind of differentiate next time or whenever we go live again, the live streams, having that diversification and having people with a new thing to look at and keeping it fresh is very important, especially in content creation. And you know that better than anybody.
Thank you, man. Appreciate that.
Yeah. So I'll leave it at that, guys. Thanks again to Chris Platty for hopping in on the live stream /podcast. We really appreciate having him every single time. But I'll leave it at that, guys. Thank you for tuning in. I'm your host, John J. II. Have a great night.